So, we have ourselves a Vancouver Canucks game that will take place against the Seattle Kraken later tonight. I will not be watching this game. There is volleyball that I'm going to be playing instead, and I'll admit, I may not actually be here at home for the end of the game, so the post-game video may have to wait a little bit. I apologize about that, but I do have plans to go out there and make the post-game video regardless, because we've been making a video every single game this year so far, and if we do end up doing this, we complete the season. I think it would be the first time in the YouTube channel's history that we've done that. Like, we've had seasons where we've covered most of the games, seasons where we've covered over 82 games, if you include the preseason and the play-in series and playoffs, but never a full year. So this is kind of the goal now. We're over halfway through the season. We've done every game. So when it comes to the Canucks and the Kraken, we'll talk about that later tonight. I apologize, I'm not going to be here to watch it right away, but we have a few extra things that I wanted to talk about before the game began, as well as an update on one of the top Canucks guys that is going to need a contract soon. So, let's start out by talking about the lines and everything we had seen out of Rick Tocchet earlier this morning. Turns out, Arshdeep Bains is going to be playing on a line with JT Miller and Brock Boeser tonight, and that is a decision that I like a lot. Lines go as follows right here. You've got the all-Swede line, Höglander, Pettersson, Lindholm, Bains, Miller, and Boeser, which is, again, a line that I like. Pia Sutar is with Bluger and Garland, and then on the fourth line, you've got Lafferty, Åman, and Mikheyev. Now, as we had talked about in the video yesterday, Ilya Mikheyev has not been good this season. It's kind of a question mark where the Canucks are going to go with this guy. There's a reason he was demoted to the fourth line the other night in place of Arshdeep Bains, but having him stick around in that bottom line while Bains gets the promotion up to the second line, it is kind of a damning sign as to what Mikheyev has been capable of doing this year in the NHL. But for Bains, man, did he ever impress whilst a part of that third line the other night. So much so that he's going to be given a better opportunity with better offensive players in Miller and Boeser. This honestly has potential to be somewhat of that similar kind of Höglander-Pettersson dynamic, you know, where Bains is more of that wrecking ball, he's more of an aggressive fireball forechecker, and he plays with tenacity, he plays with heart, and then you've got Miller and Boeser who can do things offensively, and Bains can also contribute well in that respect too. It's just, if you're going to define that role, he may be more of the energy guy on this line. And as we had seen out of Rick Tocchet's systems, having that energy player on a line really does make things work. When you have Höglander playing with Pettersson, Pettersson does some pretty good things. When you have Bains playing with Miller and Boeser, you may be seeing some good things out of these American guys. And then, of course, you have that third line, which was so good all season, where both the wingers in Joshua and Garland were pretty good energy players. So this is going to be a good dynamic, having Pia Sutar down there in the third line. Hopefully that gets him going a little bit. He's always been a pretty good player, but I feel like he was kind of wasted a tad on the Boeser-Miller line. It just didn't work out all too well. But heading into tonight's game against the Kraken, this is as much of a must-win game as you can get, because if the Vancouver Canucks lose 4 straight games in a row, then all of a sudden you have to start thinking, where else does this team need to improve? Because you can't be going down that many games in a row. Now, we also had some extra things going on with defense. I mean, the pairings right now are the same, Hughes, Hronek, Cole Myers, Zadorov, Juleson, but we did have some extra things on the power play that had a lot of Canucks fans interested. Take a look at this. You have Filip Hronek joining Hughes on Power Play 1 with Miller, Pettersson, and Boeser. So, it seems like the Vancouver Canucks' answer to this power play being atrocious as of late is to move Lindholm off of it and put Hronek on that first pairing. Does this mean that the second unit is not going to have a defenseman? Okay, we'll see what happens there. Maybe Tyler Myers gets a rep or something. But Elias Lindholm not being on that first power play, I think it's a pretty alright move. Having Hronek and Hughes together, as we had seen earlier in the season when Andrei Kuzmenko was in the doghouse, it actually was a pretty alright unit, so we'll see where exactly they're able to go. Hronek adds a good one-timer option because his slap shot is so powerful, but when it comes to the cycling game, I mean, there's no match for what the Canucks were able to do when you had JT Miller on that left flank, Hughes at the top, and then PD on the right. For some reason, I do not understand why they just don't go back with that structure, because it was so good earlier in the year. Having Miller rotating around on the right side and down low, it just doesn't work out as well as when he's on the left. So hopefully the Canucks are able to get something going here. Hronek, of course, changes the dynamic of this power play unit completely, but heading into tonight's game, I mean, hey, it's a Seattle Kraken team that hasn't particularly been the best, so if there's a chance to try to take advantage of what's in front of you, then the Canucks have that today. But speaking about that Elias Lindholm that was moved off of the top unit, we had ourselves a conversation on the Canucks Conversation podcast where Frank Saravalli made an appearance alongside of Quadrelli and Harmon. I'm pretty sure y'all are familiar with Canucks Conversation. It's a show that was started by Chris Faber. I actually did make a guest appearance on that show back in 2019, I think it was. So it's been a while, and they've grown tremendously since then. Faber, of course, is now working with the Vancouver Canucks, so the podcast was taken over by Harmon and Quads. And they had Frank Saravalli talk about Elias Lindholm on this episode, and he ends up saying that when it comes to Elias Lindholm and the Canucks, it's very likely trending towards him walking. Now, I will say that things like this can change quickly. It all depends on one conversation. A phone call can change it all. We all kind of know the cliches, right? But for now, for Frank Saravalli to go out there on a show and talk about how at this moment it looks more so like the Vancouver Canucks really just got Elias Lindholm for the end of this season and not anything else beyond that, it does kind of feel a little bit bad, but at the same time, for a Canucks fan base that has been treated to so much good hockey this season, I think this is what we should have come to expect, right? Elias Lindholm and his contract demands were reported to be in that $8-9 million range, and I'm sorry, but he's just not worth that. Like, are you paying Lindholm more money than JT Miller? I don't know about you, but I'm not. Sure, you could talk about defensive two-way responsibility, you could talk about face-off winning, you could talk about right-handed draws, whatever, but still, you don't pay this guy more money than Miller. Miller is a 100-point caliber player. Lindholm has not been that with Vancouver. In fact, if you go over to Lindholm and his production, I mean, he's got 6 points in 9 games played with the Vancouver Canucks, which is not bad. It's totally fine. But if you do the point production pace over a full 82, that's on pace for about 55 points. And I don't think his intangible quality as a two-way defensively minded, shutdown, penalty-killing, right-handed center is enough to justify paying $8 or $9 million to a guy who only gets 50-something points a year. Does he have that 80-something point year from a few years ago? Yeah, he does, but that was a point-per-game season that has been few and far between ever since, and he was playing with Gaudreau and Tkachuk back then. He was very good. They were all very good, but now they're all gone. So it's totally a different dynamic here. I don't think Elias Lindholm should be getting that $9 million cap hit that he wants, especially if it's with the Vancouver Canucks. So if Frank Saravalli is on the money here, and the Canucks do end up letting Lindholm walk for nothing, then okay, I am kind of fine with that. At the end of the day, getting rid of Andrei Kuzmenko frees up money for next year. That's very important. And the prospects, I mean, the first round pick does sting, but it's probably going to be a pretty late pick, admittedly. The 4th round pick, who really cares about that? And then the 2 prospects. Yoni Yermo was not really going to become anything, and then Hunter Brustevich. He's got a lot of potential, but hey, sometimes you have to bite the bullet to get something that you need now, right? So you could say it was an ill-advised move. I mean, I'm not really going to abide by that opinion, mostly because when it comes to what the Canucks are trying to do, you could understand that this is a much different situation than what the team has been faced with in the past. Like, sure, this is technically the same move as Tyler Toffoli back in 2019, when the Canucks shelled away Schaller, Madden, and a 2nd or a 3rd or whatever it was for Toffoli. And they only got the playoff games and the 10 regular season games out of him. Now, that's because COVID-19 took over the world, but still, back then, that was an issue of a trade because the Canucks were not really a contending team. They were on the outside looking in. They finished off that regular season when COVID shut down everything in like the 20-somethings overall position in the NHL. They were not a good team, and they were making moves as if they were a cup contender. Now, in 2024, Vancouver is literally first in the NHL still, even after losing 3 games straight. So this is a team that has all the rights, in my opinion at least, to go out there and make those buyer moves because they needed to capitalize on the season they had right now. Reward the players for playing well. So that's kind of the update on Lindholm. It's apparent that he's probably not going to re-sign, at least according to what's happening right now via Frank Saravalli. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to go ahead and listen to the audio clip where he says this on Canucks Conversation. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about this aspect of the Lindholm conversation, as well as the additions to the lineup. You've got Filip Hronek playing on the power play. You've got Arshdeep Bains with Miller and Besser. Let me know your thoughts on how this is going to go against the Seattle Kraken. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.